it's your girl Nancy Red, and this is season 3 of Mompreneurs, where we are every week celebrating beautiful Black entrepreneurs who are simultaneously amazing business moguls and awesome moms, listening to their life stories and inspiring advice. Now, y'all who've been listening for a while know that I'm an entertainment-oriented entrepreneurial mommy, and my whole family's in on the game too. My husband and my 2 kids are all actors, and being mom and mompreneur-in-chief of everyone's hustles is extremely fun, but it can come with its challenges too. But I gotta say, those challenges are worth it for all involved if you know what you're doing, and if you're careful about it. And that's why I am so thrilled to chat with our next guest, who gets it to her core. Because not only is she herself a phenom as a standalone mompreneur herself, but also because whenever I see her in these streets, which fortunately is becoming more frequent, whether it is on her funny and inspiring social media accounts, or as me and my daughter are sitting behind her as they won their first Emmy, the Dr. Kimberly J. Harris always vibes as a wonderful, positive, spiritual, kind, education-loving, mother-first mompreneur, which is really, really great to see in someone whose family is making major waves in the entertainment industry. So, Dr. Harris, who, for this interview, I hope I can call you Kim, can I?
Please, yes.
Okay, let me tell the audience a little bit about you. Dr. Harris has been in the business of education for over 30 years, and the last decade or so, she's had a pivot to entertainment where she herself has been a talent manager, a consultant, a content creator, a coach, and the brilliant mom behind Michael's Corner, where she has helped to navigate and shape her daughter, Mychal-Michelle Harris of Mixed-ish and Raven's Home, her career since a delightful Facebook video that she posted when her girl was just 3 years old went internationally viral. That's a lot. We have a lot to talk about. Welcome to Mompreneurs, Kim.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. I'm honored first and foremost to be with you, and I'm just excited to chat.
Yeah, we got a lot to chat about. But before we get into the nitty-gritty about what makes you an entrepreneur, let's talk to you about what makes you a mom. Tell us about your household, Kim. Who makes you a mompreneur?
Absolutely. I have the ever delightful Mychal-Michelle Harris, who just turned 12 years old and keeps me on my toes.
Is she an Aries?
No, she's a Pisces.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have my son, Julian Bates Harris, who is 19 years old, about to be 20. And he himself is also a filmmaker. He's attending film school, but they've been shooting their own shorts since she was 3 years old. So, yeah.
It's incredible how you see them grow and together and how delightful it is. Some people have home videos, you have home shorts.
Right. Exactly.
So you've got a big span there. You got a 19-year-old, you got a 12-year-old. My brother and I are 9 years apart, and it's delightful. Which for you came first, motherhood or entrepreneurship?
I think I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. As you mentioned, educator by trade, 30 plus years. I was in the classroom in public school system. But I always knew that there was something more. I didn't know what the more was, but I knew there was something more. And so I stayed in public education, I'd say for about 18 years until I decided I can do this for myself. So I started my own company my first company, probably when I was 17 or 18, and then have continued to push and, depending on where I was in life, pivot to meet the demands of what was happening in my life at that point. So entrepreneur always came first, but I always knew I wanted to be a mother, though. Yes.
Oh, I need to know, what was this first business that you started at 17 or 18?
18 years old, of course. Well, I was a teacher early on. And so I knew that I wanted to be a teacher and educator early on.
You're a preacher's kid, so you've been teaching the little ones since the get-go.
Exactly right. So I had my own, that business was an educational business where I would babysit for moms and take their children, but I was educating them. So they would have to play school with me when I babysat. So I had my own business at 17, 18, where I was taking care of kids, but educating them at the same time.
So you basically were like the Babysitters Club meets Abbott Elementary.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Why are we not doing that show? This is incredible.
Yes.
Oh, because it's so important, and it was a facet of your life, right?
Yes,
Because you were raised in a family that, education was key. Like many of us,
yes,
in particular, Black people of this generation,
absolutely.
education, a professional job. This was the goal. This was the
That's
ticket.
right. That's right. And a lot of people ask me, where does Mimi get it from? I did off Broadway for a number of years as well. But
Okay, see, this is what we're living for. Okay, she got it from her mama. It didn't just She didn't just fall off the
right.
tree.
But like you just said, my mother said, "Okay, you tried that out. That was cute. Now come back home and put that degree to work and get in that education in that education
That's our
industry." And
Jen.
that's what happened.
No, and here's the thing. Again, God has a plan, right? So who knows what
Absolutely.
who knows what would have been in store otherwise. But it is interesting because it wasn't that they were against our goals. They just didn't even say they could be goals, right? There weren't a lot
Absolutely.
of people who looked like us with entertainment careers, particularly as young
Absolutely,
adults.
100%. I have no regrets. I don't feel like, oh, what if I would have? That literally never crosses my mind because education really was my first passion. Although I love to sing and I love to act, I can't say that it was my first passion. So I have no regrets, but I agree with you. Our parents just didn't know how to support us at that time.
And so when you look at your path, it's amazing how when things are meant to happen, they do, right? Because you were just living your best mom life. Your daughter was 3 years old and a quote unquote regular
Yes,
mom with your entrepreneurial education because you went from the classroom into corporate
correct.
America, and then Serena Williams, or more correctly, your daughter's love for
Yes,
Serena Williams,
yes.
went and changed the
Yes.
game, right?
Well, representation matters, and that's not just a cliche or a clause that we say. It really does matter. So for us, ESPN was always on in our home. It was like breathing air for our home. And her father was watching ESPN. I don't even remember what was on. It was just ESPN was on. And Chase Manhattan Bank was running a specific campaign with Serena. And it was Serena, if you all remember. Serena was in full regalia. She had on a dress. She was made up. She had on heels. And she was playing tennis. And so the dichotomy of her being feminine and yet the strength of her hitting that ball across the tennis court for some reason at 3 years old for Mychal-Michelle, that was just everything. No matter when that commercial came on, no matter what she was doing, she would run into the room and just watch the commercial. And so we saw that happening over the course of weeks. And it was just funny to me that happened for her. She just ran in the room no matter where she was in the house. And it just so happened that she and my then husband would go outside and play tennis. And this particular day, as I'm doing my corporate thing in the home, she ran in the house and she was so excited. I didn't know what she was getting ready to tell me, but because I'm a mom and we all have children and we think things are cute, she was so excited. And she had on my pink and green. She had on a t-shirt that said, "My aunt is an AK."
My
Yes,
aunt is
right, right.
AKA.
So all of that was just cute to me, right? It
It
was
was just
cute.
so much. It was it was
As
everything
a
we're
mom,
hoping
right.
for.
So I just took out my phone, and back then, social media was a thing, but it was not as big as it is now. And I only had Facebook, and I had maybe 100 friends on Facebook. So I took the video of her telling me that she could be like Serena because daddy told me I could be like Serena. So her hero, her dad,
Cause she hit the
right?
ball hard. She's strong.
Exactly. And her hero, her dad, told her that she could be like her athletic hero, Serena Williams. And for her at 3 years old, that was all it took. I mean, she really, in her mind, she was going to be like Serena Williams because my daddy told me I can be like her. And I see her right there, so I can do that. And I took that video and I posted it on Facebook, and within hours, it was out of control. And as the educator that I am, I'm Googling, what does it mean to go viral? How many is that 100,000? Is that 1 million? Because I had no idea what was happening at that moment. But yes,
Because people have to understand, this was in 2014. This was a
right.
decade ago. We didn't
That's
grow up with
right.
social media. We just kind of inherited it and are
That's
fooling
correct.
around with it, even to
That's
this day,
correct.
kind of. But I digress. So when this happened, it was bananas. But like you said, representation matters, not just for your daughter, but what your daughter stood for in all of
Yes, I
us.
absolutely agree. It was a tipping point, right? And I think no matter how you think you can recreate that, because I mean, who wouldn't want to recreate viral moments, right? You can't recreate it. And 15 million hits later, we were getting phone calls. I was watching. I literally would just let it repeat, and then I'm like, okay, I cannot just sit here and watch this because I was just enamored by what was happening. And so within 2 hours, it had over 100,000 views. And I'm like, this is insane. So I told my sister, let's go to the movies because I can't, like, I have to get out of the house. I don't know what's happening.
You can
Yes, it really was
compartmentalize.
overwhelming at the moment. So we went to the movies, and while we're in the movies, I get a phone call from a number that was unknown to me, and it was a New York number, and everything in me said, answer the phone. So I'm in the movies, and I'm saying, right? and
Oh,
right.
you that black
Not
person.
typically. Typically, I'm not. But
No,
everything
I
in me
know.
was like, answer that call. So I'm, hello. And so they said, hello, this is Good Morning America. And I'm like, oh no. I said, okay, hold on. So then I got up and I left, and it was Good Morning America saying, we've seen your daughter's video. We would love to bring her to New York City for a little bit of press. And that's what started it. Within 24 hours, we were on a press junket with CNN, Good Morning America, ESPN, and within 72 hours, Serena Williams picked it up and invited her to the US Open. And that's really what garnered an opportunity for me to understand, because that was not the beginning of her career, but it was the beginning of the Lord saying to me, I have something in store and I need you to get on board. And it was the beginning of having to build thick skin, because in those 15 million hits, you can imagine that a good number of them were not positive. A good number of them were, oh, she just wants to be famous. She wants her daughter to be. Now, mind you, I mean, I don't need to defend it because there's no way we could have planned for this. As I always say, my daughter's hair would have been done because it wasn't. My office would have been clean because it wasn't. Like, it wouldn't have been the video.
Listen, if there's ever a reality that this was not staged,
Right,
it's the
right.
background. Let's just be real.
Exactly.
Like, okay.
Exactly.
And if you thought this
Right.
was gonna go
We
viral,
would have staged
this
it.
we would have
Exactly.
got some edge cream. Like,
Exactly.
oh. But the funny thing is, the irony of the hater comments is that they were prophetic. You know, she did become famous, but not for the nefarious
A
reasons
hundred
that
percent,
were
a hundred
presumed.
percent. And it really was an eye opener for me, because people say up until that time, how did you not know your daughter had the gifts and talents that she had? It wasn't time for me to see. I'm a firm believer in my faith. And at that particular time, it was not time. Was she animated, overly animated at that time? She was. But she's also my child. I'm a pre-K teacher and I'm animated, extremely animated. So was she exceptionally cute? Did we get stopped all the time on the street? Sure. But that didn't mean that she had, what I know now that she has. It just wasn't time for me to see.
It wasn't time for you to see, but it's something that you had planted the seed for.
Amen.
Because I've been following you, Dr. Harris, and one of the great things that you've talked a lot about the importance of education and the importance of understanding the importance of education, not just overarching,
Absolutely.
but for our community. And the idea of being melanated and educated and leaning into our gifts, in particular when it comes to Black people's gifts, that's what you've done from an early age based off of your parental influence, right? But also your educational influence, right? Let's talk a little bit about what we see in your daughter, which now she's 12, but if you guys go back and see, I remember watching her when she was this young. You couldn't have staged it so quickly because she had to go out on these stages. She was poised, she
She
was
was three.
eloquent. She was 3.
Yes.
She was bantering. She had eye contact.
Yes.
She had good posture, and she was articulate and had zero fear. Let's talk about your doctoral experience and also teaching experience for 3 decades, right? And how that shaped. Why? Because so many people want their kids to be famous or to be in these streets or to be known or the
Sure.
financial aspect of this, right? But there's the foundational layer that makes this an actual enjoyable possible
Absolutely. Well,
process,
as I've
right?
always said, or as I have already said, I've always loved children, right? I've always wanted to be an educator. As you mentioned, I'm a PK, so I grew up as a pastor's kid. So I had Sunday school classes. I had no idea what I was teaching. I knew that I loved the Lord, and I knew that I loved kids, and somebody needed to take care of the kids while the adults were in church. And so I would have my own little, every week I would, create my lesson as my father was preparing his sermon, and we would go to the Christian bookstore in our area. I would get little trinkets and gifts for my kids. Always knew I wanted to be an educator. Always knew that education was important because that was the conversation in our home. And that is your ticket. I'm not an athlete. I was a cheerleader, but at that time, cheerleading was definitely not athletics. It was just cute.
No,
Okay.
I couldn't do a split. I just look cute in my uniform, okay? I could no. So, but yes, you're correct.
That was the
Education
key.
was the key. And what you're seeing is continue on how that is fannable. It's not just to a professional job, but this precocious little kid was educated from the time
Right,
she was in
right.
your womb, quite
But for
frankly.
me, I knew that children had potential that adults just didn't want to see. So as an educator, I taught pre-K through 8, but my favorite grades were pre-K, K1, 2, because every child comes in not knowing a whole lot, and you've got to get them there by 3rd grade. Because unfortunately, the states look at that pipe to prison cradle, and by 3rd grade, if we don't capture them and their test scores are not good, that is one of the indicators of whether or not that state is going to need a new prison facility, right? So I knew these things. I understood these things. And so my plight was to teach in urban areas where I could make a difference, and so that children who looked like me had a fair shot because I believed in them the way no one else would. And so when we were in my classroom, we wouldn't use what I called the penny words. We would always use the dollar words. And so if we were studying bugs, we called it entomology. We talked about what it meant for the study of bugs. So every other classroom was talking about the study of bugs. Our billboard said entomology. And so they would have to explain, what does that mean? The study of, how do you know? Because the suffix and the prefix so we talked about those things because I wanted my children to have the same opportunities that other children had. And I just carried that as an educator into my home for my children. So we never talked baby talk to my children. We always talked full sentences to my children. We always used words that were well beyond their vocabulary so that they could add them to their lexicon. We knew that these are the things, vocabulary is one of the things that really ensures that children have opportunities. And so we talked to our children and we talked to them in complete sentences with the higher order words so that their thinking could be developed and that they were problem solvers.
And also, you really took into consideration the gifts of Black people, such as the fact that many of us, self included, were
Right.
considered to talk too much. And I never got on the honor roll growing up, even though I got straight A's academically, because I was talking too much. I always had a needs improvement on
Yes.
my behavior report, and how we are very tactile. We like to touch as a whole. And you don't just go with these tropes. You give a background explanation, and it goes quite well with the entertainment industry, right? Why do we talk so much?
Right.
Why do we talk so much,
Right.
Dr.
It is
Harris?
true. When I was a younger teacher, I came across Howard Gardner's Multiple Intelligences, and it talks about the intelligences that we all have. And there are those of us who favor or are successful in one of the intelligences than others, right? So some of us are tactile, of us are musical, some of us are visual spatial. And so Howard Gardner really talked about how we are wired a certain way. And as an educator, if you can see where that child's gift is, and so if you have the child who is always tapping at the table, they're tapping their pencil and they're tapping, I understood that there was an intelligence there that they were operating from. So this child is musically gifted, and that was one of the multiple intelligences. And so how do you make education come alive for the child who's not linguistic, but is musical? You have to vary what you're doing as an educator. And I prided myself in meeting my children where they were. And so understanding the gifts and how we're wired helped me as an educator as well as my children. My child, my son was one of those kids who was always tapping, always, but whether it was a straw, a spoon, and to this day, he's a phenomenally gifted drummer. Had I squashed that, and please put that away, please put that away, please stop doing that, which is what a lot of teachers would do because they didn't know how.
And
Absolutely.
parents by
And they didn't know
accident.
how to garner and help that child bridge the gap from where they were to where they needed to be. So I really was blessed and fortunate that I came across the work of multiple researchers who helped me to see the difference and the needs of children.
And you also make the correlation, which is related to the entertainment industry and how, as Black people, we weren't allowed to read. We weren't allowed to learn how to read. We had to pass our traditions down
That's
somehow.
right.
Orally was the way.
That's
So
right.
really good at storytelling. So she gets it from somewhere. You
That's
get
right.
your off from somewhere, whether it is academic prowess or
Absolutely.
our ancestors, right? But however it was, all of this led to you being a healthy role
Thank
model
you.
in a quite complicated
Thank you.
industry. Uh, because when we're looking at this, even you, with all of your knowledge, you didn't know anything about this industry. So did you even know it was a business
I
at
knew it
first?
was a business because I had done off Broadway for a number of years. And I went from, when I did off Broadway, I was still very young. So I had not yet entered corporate. I was just a new teacher coming out of college and had an audition myself and was really fearful because never auditioned prior to that one audition. And it was my father, believe it or not, who said, "You're gifted, you can sing. Go do the audition. What is it gonna?" And he went with me to New York City to that audition. And long story short, didn't end up winning the first place role or the first place award was to open for a show called Mama, I Want to Sing, which is the longest historically Black running off-Broadway show. And what I didn't know, it was a publicity stunt at that point. So they were getting people out to really be excited about the show that was opening a week from then. And so you came, you auditioned, and they would choose someone to open the show. So I get a phone call. Now, mind you, this is also when cell phones were not as prevalent as they are now, right? And as a young person, I barely kept the bill paid. Please be clear, right? So I would always remember we had dial tones back then, right? Remember dial tones. So I was always like, I know. Is
Children
my
don't
phone
even
working?
know.
Did I pay the bill? So, right.
But you can't. But we also didn't have call waiting because that'd have been extra $5. So you were just like, I can put it back down. Oh no, what if they called right then?
Yes,
Y'all youngins have no
exactly.
clue the struggle of waiting for the
Exactly. And
phone
my
to
parents were
ring.
not paying the phone bill. So
Oh my
please be
God.
clear. So long story short, I got a phone call and they said, you did not win the primary prize. And of course I shut down because I'm a winner. I want to be first. I'm very competitive. I don't understand. And she said, however, we'd like you to join us on our international traveling troupe of Mama, I Want to Sing. And I'm like, who wants that? Like what? And then I was like, oh, you mean like actually be in the show and travel? And so I did Austria, Japan, Switzerland. I did all of those things. And I knew then that it was a business. I knew that I had to pay taxes. I knew that, it was a very quick crash course in leaving college, now having a job, but not a traditional job. No one was monitoring your taxes. No one, you were just getting paid. You were getting paid a per diem. You had to budget. You were on the road. So I knew it was a business. I certainly was not running it like a business, and I certainly was not doing a great job of that while I was on the road. But there was something that started to churn of, wow, I could do this for a living. But that was short lived because my parents were like, come home.
Exactly. But what's so I was
Right.
like, girl, what you doing? I
Exactly.
can't, this is crazy. But it also lent when the phone started ringing for Mychal-Michelle, it meant that, wait a second, I can use the lessons I learned and avoid the pitfalls that kept me from being able to pursue this when I was quote unquote on top of the world, living my
It's
best
absolutely
artistic
100%
life.
true. I believe that everything that I've gone through prepared me for where I am with my daughter. So not only did I have the experience of off Broadway, but fast forward into my career, we did leadership. I did all kinds of things in education. And then I also went into corporate. In the corporate realm, I ended up being a national closer for the largest academic publishing company in the world, which is Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. And I ended up being their regional director. And so what happened was they would fly me out in specific regions, and then it was international, to close specific deals. And so whether it had to be a deal over $5 million. And so I bring that into play because that's when you start seeing the big numbers, and numbers are not, so a $52 million deal is not a big deal, right? So
Well, it's also when you see it's the same amount of effort. It's the same amount of effort that goes into closing a $52 million deal
It,
as a $5,000 deal. And you start wondering, well, how do I
Absolutely.
get there
But the
personally?
negotiating, the power of saying no, being able to see these big deals and not freak out because it was a whole lot of money. You understood that when I got to the entertainment business with my child, you have to understand the power of no. And that deal might look like a great deal, but at what cost to you and your family? And so I understood then the power of no, and understanding that all money is not good money, and that you have to really take your time and negotiate the right opportunity for your child and your family. So absolutely everything that I've gone through has prepared me for being here.
And I want to talk about the segue because you set your daughter up. Like, yeah, okay, yada yada yada. Because you're in Jersey, you have this calling, you realize there's a chance, you bet on your family. You fly out to Los Angeles. You don't have a job. Y'all have nothing at this point. You just have some clips from like Steve Harvey's, Little Big Shots. You have Good Morning America. You have CNN. You have the Serena Williams stuff. You have great experiences,
Not at
but you don't
all.
have a
Not at all.
guarantee.
And you talked about all the things that I didn't have. Let me tell you what I did have. I had a mortgage in New Jersey, a lease in California. I had all the bills back in New Jersey, and now the bills in California. That's what I did have. And it was literally stepping out on faith for us to move. It sounds crazy, but after the viral video, she ended up on a number of runways. We ended up meeting some phenomenal people who she had a great manager out of New York City. She ended up with a global commercial with IBM. She ended up with a global campaign for Burlington Coat Factory. And the crazy thing is, we could feel her outgrowing New York City even in a very short amount of time. And I it sounds crazy to say it today, but I knew within my spirit that if she was going to pop, she had to be in LA where the business is done. And so we absolutely took a leap of faith. After Steve Harvey's Little Big Shots, we started getting calls from all of the LA kids agencies. We took meetings with every single one of them while we were filming Steve Harvey's Little Big Shots. Every one of them offered her, now she's 4 at this point, and every one of them offered her representation. And they all said, we never ask anyone to move because there's no guarantee. So we're not going to ask you to move. But what we will tell you, this little girl is going to pop. And when she pops, you need to be here. So if it's at all possible for you to get here, at least for a temporary amount of time, because back then there was still pilot season, not so much anymore. But if you can be here for pilot season, right?
R.I.P.
And we did that. Steve Harvey's.
And pilot season, for people who don't understand, is when the bulk of the new TV shows are casting new talent. So now it's like spread all out. But it used to be you had
That's
3
right.
months of no sleep. And I don't know how you did this with a 4-year-old, because with my sweet kids, like they have 3 auditions today each, and I'm just like,
Right.
okay, we're gonna have a snack, and they're 10 and 13. I don't really know how you did this with a 4-year-old, except for the fact that you had parents under
Not
her
even
wing.
that, Nancy. You know what the crazy thing was? Because I had done off Broadway, I really wasn't, and I'm just gonna say it. I knew the industry enough to know that some make it, some don't. So we're not going to put all our eggs in this basket. She may or she may not, but I'm not going to get all excited because she ended up with an Alicia Keys video before we left New York City. We did not know it was Alicia Keys until we got there. And when we got to the audition, this is in New York City and it's cold. It's the winter in New York City. And we had an appointment for the audition. It was not just an open call. When we got there, the line for the audition was out the door and wrapped around the corner. And I said to the little then 3-year-old, I said, listen, little girl, I don't do lines. I just, and I'm not doing lines in the cold for this audition. We have an 11:30 appointment. If they are off schedule, I'm going to go out there with you, but we are not staying. This little girl at 3-year-old said to me, Mommy, you always say have patience and you have no patience. You need to have patience. Right?
Okay, listen. That's what I'm saying. She was meant for. She's just like, this is my.
It's
Don't
true.
mess up my hustle,
It's
mom. I
true.
ain't got time for you and your bad attitude. No, it's on. No, I had this with Nance too. Excuse me, Rupali, which is her stage name. Like, I don't want to do this stuff. That's what people don't understand. I'm just being a good mom. This is like going to like a gymnastics practice. I'm
Thank you.
constantly hoping they want to stop. Not in a bad way, but because I
Exactly.
have a life. You have a life. This is
Right.
mompreneurs. This is not kidpreneurs. And the thing is, you've pivoted, and I think what's great is there's
Yes.
positives
Yes.
in all of this, right?
It's
But
very
it's
hard.
hard. You had to give up so much. And it's part of the dream. I mean, I think one of the great things about your story, you got this 3-year-old in this line. She ends up booking it in the chaos of lines, right? And I think one of the great things about it is the definition of entrepreneurship. I just had a mentee start talking about, do you even know what an entrepreneur
Right.
is? What's
Right.
entrepreneurship, sis? Like, it is taking on all the financial
Absolutely.
risk for perceived gain. It means you don't get no check, you don't get nothing, you're going to go in debt,
A
you might
hundred
not get paid
percent.
for the work you do. Uh, and it's all risk. And it's
Yes.
especially risky as a mompreneur because, like you said, you're not the kid who has. Because I tell my kids, I mean, who cares? What's it? Doesn't matter in your life. You're the kid.
Right.
This is great. Live your best life. But me, I
Absolutely.
got bills and a
Absolutely. And
mortgage.
that's exactly right. And so when we got out here, the agents, and it's funny because we got out here and nothing, nothing. When I tell you nothing, I
Nothing, of
mean
course.
nothing,
Crickets
Nancy, nothing.
for
And what happened
years.
was she ended up booking LOL Surprise, which when she went in for the audition, she was going in for another role. I don't even remember what it was. But when they got in there, they just loved her linguistic ability. They loved that she took direction well. And so they gave her another line. Now, of course, as you know, we're not in the casting rooms. We don't know what's going on in the casting room. Sometimes you may put your ear up against the wall and be able to hear something, but often you don't know what's in the casting room. She's 4.5, almost 5 at this point. So, I mean, how much do you take the word of a 5-year-old about what really happened and what the adults were doing in the room? She came out of the room and she was like, Mom, they wrote a new line for me. And I had to say, what are you talking about, son? And she just thought that was the best thing. So they wrote this line for her. She delivered it. They loved it. And lo and behold, she still gets viewed, or she still gets recognized for the work that we did with LOL Surprise. Who knew that LOL Surprise was going to
Who knew?
garner, to this date, we have over 500 million views on the LOL Surprise work that we did. And that really was a preparation for her to be in front of the camera and to understand what this was about. Because LOL Surprise, there were 2 individuals on the show. It was a 22-minute segment, and it was just the 2 of them. So they had all the lines. Remember, she's not reading yet. So she has to memorize all of her lines, but she also has to memorize the lines preceding hers and after hers so that she knows when to come in. So she had to remember everybody's lines. And again, it just showed that she was put here to do that because she had no problems with that. And like you, I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. Like I just,
And also because you had questions like, how is this line being contextualized? Like, what's going on? Like, there's a whole mood, right? But also, even more importantly, which I think is very important, because I do want to quickly transition to your side of the
yeah,
business, right? But this is part of it because every entrepreneur has to start small. And even big things can be small in our industry. You can have the
yes,
most visible thing
yes.
that's so amazing, but it was not the lucrative experience that you thought it should
And
be
that's
for
my
your
point
child's
for
college
telling you.
fund. And exactly. No. But here's the thing. So LOL Surprise is very much out there, but it's before she's a big name. But what's the blessing that came from that experience? Why should entrepreneurs do all the little things that they can, no matter what they are? You have to weigh the pros and cons and the benefits and look at the situation. Why is that important in any kind of industry, but in particular in the entertainment industry for a mompreneur to really consider the
Well,
ROI
and
of an
that was my
experience as
point
a
for
whole?
sharing it, is because, as I mentioned, the bills were mounting and we had nothing. And so this was a self submission as well. I submitted her on this role because there was nothing going on. And as you just mentioned, I left my entire career to come to LA to a
A
very
good
lucrative.
career,
Absolutely.
an
We were
excellent
fine.
career.
I To this day I'm like, Lord, I can go back to my career because okay.
I was killing
And that's
it.
why I was sharing it, because then I remember just getting a word from the Lord, and He was like, "Despise not small beginnings. You don't know what I'm doing behind the scenes with this." And that's exactly what it was. What it was an opportunity to start to learn the business without high stakes. I didn't know it then, but I can look back now and tell you that as a mom, and for her as talent, but more for me as a mother, that's where I learned the power of no. That's where I learned to make sure that my child was always in my sight or within sound. That's where I learned to say, listen, folks, I don't know what it is you think you're going to do, but we're not doing that. That's not a good look for my child. I learned all of those things as a mom on those sets. And please hear me. I'm not saying, I'm not disparaging LOL or at all. I'm saying, yeah,
No, no, no. Everybody won because what happened with those people who
yes,
were behind the
yes,
scenes watching your daughter? This is not a
absolutely,
disparagement. This is a glow up. What happened? The LOL was a stepping stone
absolutely.
to how, and how it was a very unique way that
Absolutely.
you never know how it's going to work
Absolutely.
out.
And I am so grateful for that opportunity. Had we gone to Mixed Dish, because that was our next step, had we gone there before and became a series regular before that, we would not have been ready. There would have been so many pitfalls. I had to negotiate contracts because remember, our team was not big then. We had an agent. That's it. We didn't have a manager. We didn't have business managers. We didn't have PR. We didn't have an attorney. So it was me. And I'm telling you, when those contracts would come in, I'm like, okay, Lord, now look, if I'm not supposed to sign this, just send a sign because I don't know what I'm reading. I don't know how, what I'm looking at. Right.
It's gobbledygook. It's this how famous Amos
Yes.
signed his name away to them
Yes.
cookies. Like,
Yes.
oh no, it's so. Here's the great thing. So it all worked out because LOL
Yes.
was an amazing stepping stone to this blessing that was Mixedist, being part of this family,
Yes.
going to Raven's home, and then what happens, hopefully, with all of our children, no matter if it's when they are 10 or 30,
Yes.
eventually they get settled. And
Yes.
then mom's there, right? So how has you leaving your excellent career behind to help your daughter's career, how has that shaped your personal entrepreneurship as you like all of us moms try to find
So,
yourself in the
I'm
fray?
I'm that person that's always going to be 100% honest and real. I love what I do for my child. I would not have it any other way. I wouldn't want anyone else to do it. It has brought us closer. We share things that we probably would never share. As a person, as an individual, it is oftentimes exceptionally unfulfilling for me because I don't really have time. And I also have another child. So I don't really have time for me at all. And I understand the sacrifice. I'm willing to make the sacrifice. And that does not, two things can be true at the same time. And so it does not change the fact that there are days when everyone goes to bed and I have a little bit of quiet time and I get my iced tea and my popcorn and settle down in bed and I say, but Lord, what about me? But what about me? What about things that are fulfilling to me? And it's not even about the time because we'll find time to get it done. It's just that I have to be so focused that I don't.
And strong and committed to the plan. Like that's you. That's why you are so impressive. You're razor sharp. It's like like you just got it because otherwise
Yes,
that's how
yes.
chaos
We don't
happens.
have a choice, right? So we say all these things and we're like,
No.
I'm so tired of this and I can't do that again. And we get right back up everything that we just said we're tired about because we have to.
Well, because we have to, and you have made a point, and this is very important for anyone listening. I love what you say when you say your kid has to want it the most. It cannot be your goal because this is not my. I always tell my children, look, y'all, do not come to me with these complaints because we will stop this in a heartbeat. Because Mama has a life. Mama literally
Right,
has. You
right.
see Mama's life. So I'm squeezing this in, and that's because you know me. I will go to an event. I look like I look and say I will have no makeup on. I have a snatchback
No, I'm
ponytail. She's
not.
always put together.
No,
I'm
I'm
like, how you
not.
do this? Well, you're more put together than me because I'm over there showing up very unhoused, very like I have the same jacket that always works. We put it on. We keep going because it's not about me,
Well, you saw
and
how
that it's not
unhoused
about me
I
at
was at the
all.
last
It
event that I
is
had to
their
come
joy.
back to you.
You look great. You had your Ravens home jacket. I was like, sis, God. And also, you look great in general. But I digress. We're off the page. now you are focusing on you. You have a chance because your daughter's older, she's more established, she's been on a show for years. Your entrepreneurship is on its way up. Talk to us about what you're doing now. And what's
Yes.
great about it is it's educating. You're back, as you always have been, to educating
Yeah, and
people
thank you
who
for
need it
saying that.
very much.
During the strike, we all, were just here. So first we had the pandemic, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to eat my way through the pandemic because that's just, I'm not trying to be productive. I'm going to eat. That's what I did. I felt like it was a space
Yeah.
for me to just,
Yeah.
it was, it was, it,
Your
we,
time to shine.
right.
Let me tell you, those zooms from the neck
Right.
up
So
just
that's
messed
what I
us
did
up,
during the
girl.
pandemic. I felt like that was my time to not have to worry about anybody's career, to not have to worry. I took a moment and just did me. And so when the strike hit, it was like, well, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to eat my way through the strike. And I don't know. So I started thinking about educating again. And I was going to, during the strike, to go back into education here in California. And then I said, what am I going, the kid is in school. What am I, I can't do that. So what can I educate on? And so I decided the industry and entertainment is my new passion. And so what I did was create courses around how to help your child on the business side. So there's a lot of people out there coaching and how to get your kids started. That wasn't my desire. Not that it's not necessary or needed. My desire was the business side. Because if you have the talent but don't understand the business, you will not be successful.
Oh, well, that's why I know so much about you because when we started entering this, I was doing my research and you didn't have YouTube. You didn't have a you. I was Googling people. I was buying these books because
Yes.
I didn't want my children to get played, right? Like I wanted
Yes.
to make really good decisions for them. And what's really great is I often ask, where do you get your inspiration? And I'm not sure if you're aware of this correlation, but when I think about what you're doing with creating these courses and opening up people's eyes about the business of our industry, you're basically being kind of like your dad. Because before we wrap up, talk a little about what your dad did, not just as a pastor, but also as a community leader and an activist and helping the Black community by getting them excellent jobs within
Yeah.
worlds
So
they didn't understand.
you did your research. Wow. That's crazy.
Well, no, well, I mean, we're trying
Yes.
to, I think research is important. I think education is important. That's why we have mompreneurs, so people can kind of get this information that you and I have spent. You did your research, girl. You and I have
Yes.
spent countless hours, thousands of hours protecting our
Yes.
families, and we are fortunate to have that time. So why I like this show is
Yes.
we synthesize the information
Yes.
for people who
So
just
my
have
father
45 minutes.
he worked for the federal government as an EEO officer, equal opportunity officer, and he was an air traffic controller. And as an air traffic controller, he did not, obviously, there were not a lot of air traffic controllers out there that looked like him. And he was an air traffic controller during the Reagan years. And so that was when the big strike happened. And he had decisions to make. There are not a lot out there that look like me. I was very, it was very difficult for me to get this job because back then, and I don't know how it is now, but you had to take civil service test. So you had to pass test in order to even get to the grade where you could apply for certain jobs. And the FAA was one of them. And so he would go out there into the community and teach other people that look like us, other melanated people, on how to take the civil service test in order to have opportunities such that he had. And I would go with him every Saturday as we would go out into the community. And I don't remember quite because I was so young. I don't remember how they marketed it, but there would be no less than 30, 40, 50 people in the room. And he would have conversation with them and teach them how to take the civil service test and what to look for. And when they made a certain grade on that test, and I don't mean grade as in academic passing of the test, I mean a certain civil service grade, because that's how you were able to apply for jobs. He would tell them how to apply for those jobs. And that was so empowering to me that I think that's why I wanted to become an educator, because I saw him doing those kind of things and the differences it would make in the lives of the people he was helping because they didn't have that information.
And now what you're doing, they didn't have the information, and you see people like, yeah, I was talking with an author, and she was talking about helping other authors. We network across, right? And not up. across and down is the best way, because you see people going, some of us not going to make it. And usually it's a lack of information. It's not talent.
Absolutely.
It's a lack of information. So what you're trying to do as part of your mompreneurs is provide information, just the bits and pieces, so that you don't get played or
100%.
waylaid.
I'm trying to help you to avoid the pitfalls and to empower you to understand that this is your business and this is your opportunity, and you have to take hold of it, because if you don't, no one else will. And one of the most effective things and the most powerful things you need to understand in this industry is the power of no. You have got to be okay with saying no. And if you don't hear anything else, it's the thing that I would love for all of parents who are helping their children in this business. You have to be able to say no. You can't want it more than your children. You just can't. You can't.
I have said no so many times to the most important opportunities.
Absolutely.
For a variety of reasons.
Absolutely.
And I am proud of it. I stand by it, and we keep it moving. And I am thankful that that is the message that you are ending by. I laugh because one of the last questions I like to ask is if you can leave our listeners with your business and life mantra, words to live by. And I think that's a good one. But I also think there's probably another one, like the power of no. And it's also important to see your kids hear you say no. That is also an aspect of it. Because you want them to grow up and not be beholden. The whole point of entrepreneurship, wouldn't you say, is to not be beholden, to not feel like you got to hang on to whatever little scraps you got because you need that one check. It's the diversification of your capacity.
And if I could leave with one other word, it would be, without a vision, the people perish. So before you start to become an entrepreneur in whatever industry that is, you need to have a vision, you need to have a plan, and then you need to work the plan. You cannot come into being an entrepreneur off the, flying by the seat of your pants. You cannot. You have to have a vision, and you have to understand, like you said earlier, what are the key performance indicators that show you the return on that investment? And if you're working that vision, then you have to be able to understand when you need to pivot and when you need to invest.
Love it. Just rock solid as though you wrote that down. Okay, our time is almost up, but of course, I know. And if anyone's listening, it's like, why does she keep cutting her off? She's spitting gems. It's because I got a time limit, y'all. Like, they squished me up in here. But of course, I can't let you leave without participating in my favorite segment, which is called Mompreneurs Manifestation, where I ask all of our guests what's next for you, or what you're hoping comes next, and how we can help manifest success in this endeavor for you.
I would say the thing that I hope comes next is that people are able to use the resource. My whole goal, and you'll hear my daughter say it whenever she's doing press, is the give back, right? We're grateful for the opportunities, and we love that. It's wonderful. But it's the give back for us. We want to encourage others. We want to empower others. We want to have opportunities that we can just pour into others, because everyone teach one, everyone bring one up, and that's our goal. And so we really want to be in the space where we can support others and empower others.
I love it. The call and response, that's everywhere on your websites. To whom much is given,
much is required.
Absolutely. Okay, so how can we find this? Tell us where everyone can find not just you, not just your daughter, not just your son, but also your incredible courses and other ways they can get more use out of your incredible knowledge and capacity.
Absolutely, and thank you for asking. If you're interested in what we have to offer, you can go to our website, which is Myki Forever. That's MYKIforever.com. And everything you need to know is there. Certainly you can inbox us, you can contact us, and we will respond immediately on whatever support you need.
I love that. And that is just such a wonderful way to end this. This has been a huge blessing. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Nancy, thank you so much for having me. And congratulations to you and all that you're doing as well. I see you.
Yeah, we out here trying to get it.
Yes.
Well, and also everyone who's listening, thank you for listening to Mompreneurs. And as a reminder, a brand new episode will go live each Monday on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Visit urban1podcast.com to learn more. That's urban, the number one, podcast.com. Mompreneurs is brought to you by the Urban One Podcast Network and MadameNoire. Created, produced, and hosted by me, Nancy Wren. Executive produced by Sarita Wesley, Allison McGovna, and Tanya Hoffler-Moore. Produced and edited by Jiminique Miller.